Colum Eastwood, SDLP leader, thank you very much for speaking to Belfast Live. Firstly, to ask you about last year's Assembly election results. The SDLP lost several seats in the Assembly election in May last year, dropping from third to fifth largest party at the Assembly. And polling since then does suggest that support for the SDLP has dipped even further. So what's going wrong under your leadership?
Well, I wouldn't pay too much attention to those particular polls, given how wrong they were before the last election. But look, we know we're in a difficult place. The political context is very difficult for us, of course, at the last election. Jeffrey Donaldson told people that we couldn't have a nationalist First Minister, and people responded. And that is still an issue that hasn't been resolved. That mandate hasn't been allowed to be fulfilled. So I think that is where people are at right now, but that's a very temporary position. I'm very confident actually that this weekend at our conference we're going to set out a new mission for the SDLP, which is about building a movement for a new Ireland, doing the hard yards to convince people that the future is best placed within a new Ireland. I think the SDLP actually is best placed to make those arguments. Sinn Féin will do their work, and that's fine, but they can't reach into communities that we can reach into. They can't convince the unconvinced. And Alliance, of course, won't take part because they don't seem to have a view on the future of the island, and that's for them to explain. But we have a very clear role now, moving beyond Brexit, moving into the conversation about the future of the Constitution. I think we have a clear role in being the convincers that the kind of Ireland that we want to see is based on reconciliation, and we want to bring people with us. And I think, frankly, if an SDLP didn't exist, you'd have to invent one.
How are you going to win back voters that are drifting both towards Sinn Féin and the Alliance Party?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm involved in a long-term plan. We have elections, every year, more than one sometimes, in this place. But we're putting forward a good slate of candidates, very good group of people, very talented, who work very hard on the ground. And I think they will win over voters on their own, never mind the fact that we're going to sell a very positive message about the future, actually, that politics has changed, that Brexit has changed everything, that now we need to move into this next phase of Irish politics, and the SDLP are key in terms of that conversation.
Now, looking at council matters, SDLP voted against an almost 8% council rates increase in Belfast, but in Derry and Strabane Council, the SDLP joined with other parties in supporting an almost 8% rates increase. So why are rates increases okay during a cost of living crisis in Derry, in your constituency, but unacceptable in Belfast?
Well, of course, we didn't want council rate increases anywhere. But this isn't a big ideological debate. Councils have their own discrete budgets and their own discrete issues, and many of these issues are actually dealt with elsewhere. So people's wages have gone up, and rightly so. They have to be paid for by councils. In fact, Derry and Strabane Council, largely because it's a much poorer area, tends to do more for ratepayers, and has got the rate support grant has been cut to shreds by Stormont, and they've been left then having to put that burden on the ratepayers when they didn't actually want to. But sometimes you just have to make the books balance, and you can't just put your fingers in your ears and pretend just because you want it to be this way, it's going to be this way. So they have to be responsible as well. And I think in every single council that we were involved in, we made very, very hard decisions, but we tried very hard as well to keep the rates as low as possible. It's a very difficult funding environment right now for local councils. It shouldn't be. The burden shouldn't be placed on ratepayers, but because of the budget set not dealt with by Stormont, ended up being set by the British government, then we had to be in that situation.
Now, in Belfast, Carl White, a North Belfast councillor who was also formerly the SDLP's political director, he has circulated leaflets to households criticising the rates increase in the city. But in Derry and Strabane Council, you have your representatives defending a rates increase, arguing that a rates freeze would have led to severe job losses. So which is correct?
Well, they're two different issues because they're two different councils with two different budgets, two different spending plans, two different numbers of staff. So it isn't like with like. They're two very discrete issues. Put it this way, see, at every single council that we have representatives, we wanted no increase at all, but sometimes that's just not possible, and you have to make the books balance. And we're a responsible political party. We'll do whatever we can to look after the most vulnerable, but we'll also be responsible, and we'll also not be walking away from our responsibilities of making decisions.
Now, looking ahead to the council election in May, SDLP sources told the Belfast Telegraph that the party could lose up to 25 seats. So how many seats do you think the party will lose?
Well, first of all, we're going into this election to try and win seats and gain more support. I don't know how anyone has come up with that figure. We're working very hard across all the different constituencies. I think we're going to do well, actually, and we're announcing good new candidates, and you'll see some more of that in the coming days. And I think people will be very happy with the slate of candidates that we have, and people will be surprised at the result that we get.
Now, in 2020, the SDLP announced plans to create the New Ireland Commission, which is a civic forum to discuss the future constitutional arrangements on the island of Ireland. It launched its first panel in 2021, but nothing has really been produced apart from a 12-page document outlining a very broad set of 6 core principles. So why has the Commission achieved so little?
Well, I don't know why you would say that, because we were very clear at the outset that we were going to engage in very private conversations with people who didn't want to have public conversations about this. When I hear all the time people saying that unionists aren't going to engage in the conversation about the future of the island, well, I can tell you for a fact it's not true, because they've been engaging with us over a period of 18 months of quiet conversations. We have now moved it into the public phase. You're seeing that happening very publicly, where we're getting people coming to meetings from very different backgrounds and telling us what they think. That's the work that we're engaged in, because we really believe if we're serious about building a case for United Ireland, we have to bring people with us. We have to understand what their fears are, what their concerns are, and that's why we've been doing it this way. I mean, we could have huge public rallies and trumpet them all around the place, but we actually want to win in the end, and we want to bring people with us. That's the mission of the SDLP. That's what we're engaged in, and I think you'll see more and more activity now that we've moved into the public phase.
The Commission held its first public meeting in February, a meeting of young people in North Belfast, but it wasn't advertised publicly and no press were invited. So is a meeting public if you don't tell anyone about it?
I don't really understand that line of question. We invited a group of people to come along to meet with the Commission, and they were, young people from across the political divide, and that was done very deliberately. We'll do those kind of meetings. We'll do public meetings. We'll do all different kinds of meetings. There's no big hidden thing here. We're very determined to have meetings and conversations right across this island. We've already met with all the major political parties in the south. We've are asking to meet all the major political parties up here. We're engaging with the governments. We are going to engage in the most meaningful way possible. We're not playing at this. We're very serious. This is the new mission of the SDLP. It is the work that I'm absolutely committed to, and it's the work that this party is going to be focused on from now through the next decade.
Irish Labour leader Ivana Bacik says there have been extensive discussions with the SDLP on collaboration, and she has not ruled out a future merger. So can you rule out a future merger with the Irish Labour Party?
Look, we're not interested in mergers. We're interested in the SDLP's ability actually to reach out beyond our own base, to speak to political parties that maybe some other parties can't speak to in the same way, to build the broadest possible base for the case for a new Ireland. That's what we're engaged in. We also are very good actually at reaching out beyond our own political base. If you look at the transfers that we're going to get in this election, we get votes and transfers from people from a unionist background. Sometimes we're derided for that on Twitter, but it's going to come in pretty handy when we have the conversation about a new Ireland. But look, we work with all political parties. We work very well with Irish Labour, of course, because we're both members of the Party of European Socialists, but there's no discussion about a merger or anything else.
And can you confirm once and for all for people, is the formal partnership between Fianna Fáil and the SDLP dead?
It's a funny way to describe it. I mean, what we did, we worked on a policy partnership with Fianna Fáil, and we ended up having the Shared Island Unit, which has got something like €2 billion in a bank account to be spent on delivering projects for people. Because, I know the media are obsessed with this and obsessed with issues around mergers and everything else. What we're focused on really is delivery for people, and I think that'll be a huge legacy of that project that we were involved in. We have a very good relationship with Fianna Fáil. I have a very good personal relationship with the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin. We continue to have that, but we believe now in this next phase of Irish politics, this is about being able to reach out beyond our own party and into as many political parties as possible. That's a sort of a skill that the SDLP is uniquely placed to use, and I think that's what we're going to do.
And finally, I've asked you about the electoral pressures that the SDLP is facing as well as polling results. So is the upcoming SDLP annual conference your last as party leader?
No, absolutely not.